morning. So we're going to wait a couple of seconds for the last people to walk in. There's enough space. Cool. Yes. So the next 45 minutes, we want to talk about decoupled Drupal, but not from a technical point of view, not from a hosting point of view, not from an engineer point of view, not from a design point of view, but from a business point of view. And who of you, show of hands, who of you actually has done decoupled project? Doesn't matter if live or not, just show of hands. Okay, okay. And who has actually delivered a production site that is running with clients? So you got money for it? A bit less. Okay, no, that's good, thanks. So who are we, or why do I talk about that? So I'm the CTO of Amazy, and Amazy has a company called Amazy Labs, which is roughly 40 people. And these are all over the world. And we provide 24/5 support in terms of maintenance and upgrades and stuff like that. And we have been a Drupal agency since Drupal 6. So until 2016, we pretty much did Drupal only. That was it. When somebody came to us, we built everything in Drupal. And we were actually pretty much against all of that decoupled things that already started in 2015. We were actually very verbal about it, because we didn't like it in terms of performance, SEO, accessibility. There were just a lot of things that we didn't like. But then, as things happen, we actually had the first React project. We got a request from a client, and everything screamed React, because they wanted multiple different front ends, combining all them together in one single backend. And we decided, instead of using domain access or a Drupal multisite or trying to synchronize code between different Drupals, we said we're going to build multiple decoupled React front ends that all talk via one API to one Drupal backend. We started that project in 2016, and we had a lot of success. We had a lot of failure, and we'll talk about failure more about today. But we saw that the whole decoupled area was much better than what we saw initially in 2014, 2015. So today, we call ourselves a Drupal and React agency. We do either fully decoupled projects, we do progressive decoupled projects, or we do still fully Drupal-only projects. And we're going to look at all of these three, what they mean, what it does, and what not. But first, I want to make sure that we all understand the difference between fully and progressive. And it's going to go a bit into code right now, but we just bear with me, because I think it's important that we as business people know what does it really mean in terms of what is the implications if we decide we want to build something fully or just progressive and decoupled. The most important thing is fully decoupled means there's no Drupal front end anymore. And the progressive decoupled means you still have a Drupal front end, but you put decoupled where it really makes sense. But you still have the full Drupal front end running, all the Twig, all the CSS, all that stuff is still there. So let's look at what does this really mean for fully decoupled. As mentioned, there is no Drupal anymore in the front end. That means there's a system like React, Vue, Angular, Ember, whatever you want to choose or whatever you decide, is talking to the Drupal via some kind of API. Right now in Drupal, there are two of them. We have the JSON API and we have the GraphQL, which at the end provide the same functionality with some different concepts on how to access them, but it really doesn't matter. At the end, it's a choice like React or Vue. You can choose between JSON API and GraphQL. One important thing, though, is if you want to have SEO and accessibility functionality, you need some kind of server-side rendering. I'm not going to go too deep into that, what it means. There's a couple of talks by myself as well, what that does. But at the end, it means if you want a good SEO and good accessibility, you need to be able, on the server side, to render the HTML and the CSS to send it to the browser. And here comes the most important thing. Every interaction that you know from Drupal is gone. Commenting feature, gone. Views, exposed filters, gone. Web forms is gone. because all of that is done via the Drupal module, with the module doing some stuff on the front end. And all of that is not there anymore. So that means if your site has any of these things planned to have on the front end that the user can interact with the website, and you decide for a fully decoupled approach, you have to think about each of these things. So it's not anymore like just going in web forms and enabling some things, or going in a view and enabling some exposed filters. All of that will not work out of the box. And I'm talking about today. There will be more and more, and we see that already. There is now a drop-in replacement for comments, for example, that it's not a Drupal module you enable, and then you have comment functionality in React, for example. So there is, as more and more agencies and more teams are doing fully decoupled websites, they are starting to share how they do that and how they learn. They share the code, so we can all consume from it. But that's the most important thing. And there were many, many times in the last 2 years where we had head-to-desk moments where we realized it's just not there anymore, or we have to think about that. We have to implement now in React. And I don't want to say, sometimes it's actually much easier. We're going to see some functionality later where we can do stuff in React that will be super hard in Drupal. And the other important thing is, you can have two completely separate and different development streams. That means you could technically have a team that works on the front end and another team that works on the back end. And they don't depend on each other. They can actually deploy at different times and do whatever they want. And it also means you can update, let's say, the React. You can update to the next version of React without changing the Drupal backend. Or you could update the Drupal backend without touching a single line of code on the front end. And that's a huge improvement from the past, where Drupal, if you just upgrade the module because it has a security feature or a security update, now suddenly your whole front end is breaking because of that upgrade. So it's a separation of concerns between front end and back end. It means, though, you actually have to do it. You still have both things to update, and you have to track both systems and things like that, but you can actually do it. So let's try to look at an actual fully decoupled example. So here we have one of our clients, the paraplegia.ch. They do paraplegic support for patients, and we just recently rebuilt their website. When I go here to the start page, nothing really looks like it is actually decoupled. You don't see that as a first impression. We have big videos, we have all the stuff that we can all do in Drupal, we have some flyout menus, things like that. But if I go here in building project, we can see down here that we have some GraphQL requests. So that means the React that is now running in my browser, instead of requesting the whole HTML and everything from the server, it's just requesting some GraphQL, some API data from the website, from the Drupal, and renders that on my start page. If I now go to another menu item, we can see again, it did some GraphQL requests at the bottom, and now the really cool thing actually happens. If I go back to the page that I was before, it's going to be instantly there, because the browser can actually cache the requests that it did before. Many decoupled frameworks like React and Vue have these capabilities now. So they know that I just visited the page a couple of seconds before, so I can render that immediately without actually doing a request call, a React request anymore. So here we see, but you see that everything else that we see on the website, we had to rebuild. So there is some interactive features, and all of them we had to build in React, and we had to make sure that they all still work. Let's look at the other side. Progressive decoupled. As mentioned, it still has a Drupal front end, and parts of the website can be built with JavaScript, meaning React, Vue, and Angular. And the data is either coming from an API, so the React talks to to Drupal via an API, again, JSON API or GraphQL, or it can actually be directly injected in Drupal. So the Drupal could render some JSON into the HTML, and then the React loads it immediately to not have like a double round trip to the backend. But the really cool thing is, we don't need to re-implement Drupal, aka web forms, comments, and stuff like that, if we don't really need it. It's our decision, or the decision of the team, to decide that part I want to re-implement or that part I want to implement. On the other side, though, now I have somehow two systems trying to do the same thing on the front end. Because usually React or these systems, they bring their own CSS systems, they bring their own build systems, stuff like that, and now we have to Drupal at the same time. So you can have sometimes issues with like CSS selectors overwriting each other because Drupal brings some CSS, the React brings some CSS, stuff like that. So there is some complexity there, while on the fully decoupled you have a clear understanding. The React, for example, is handling all of the CSS. Here with progressive decoupled, it can be a bit more complex. So let's look at an example. We have here, that's a company called uBlocks. They sell all kinds of different chips from GPS and Wi-Fi and things like that. And they have a product selector. And the product selector has quite some filters on the left side. They can be quite complex. And if I select one, you can see it's just a regular Drupal exposed filters with search API, so when I select one, it updates. And now, together with the client and with some feedback, we realized that this can be quite complex for an engineer that is searching for a chip, what to actually do. So what we did is we implemented the so-called guided product selector, and that part is built with decoupled. So the first question we asked them is, okay, hey, in which market are you? And I click on it, and you can see it's instant. There's no waiting or anything, because that's actually a React app that immediately shows me the next. And now, based on cellular, it shows me a map of the world, because it knows when you have cellular, you need to know in which location you want to go. If I would go back and not select the cellular, it will not show me the map. So I can say, okay, I want to have the US, and then I can click next step, and I say, okay, actually I need full mobility. Do I need 10 years? No, okay. And now I click show products, and now it sends me, the React sends me back to the product selector that is built by Drupal again and shows me the display. So this is a perfect example where the decoupled part, just the guided product selector, gives a very good experience, a very fast experience, and I, as a Drupal developer, only need to worry about that part, while all the other things, all that filters and all that stuff, is still done by a regular Drupal search API with facets, stuff like that. The other example we have is Zurich.com. Zurich.com is the website of the tourism of Zurich, and they have a huge website with all kinds of different things that tells you about what is awesome in Zurich and stuff like that. And that's just a regular Drupal site, like nothing fancy here, but they provide an hotel search where you can actually say, okay, when do I want to check in, when do I want to check out, and how many rooms and things like that I have. And so for that, we wanted to create a really nice experience. So like people know from Airbnb that map on the right side updates on the automatically. So, and we actually implemented that. So if I search in here, I can see while I zoom out, it shows me on the left side all hotels that are shown on the right side. So it's that nice experience. I can search where do I want to go and things like that. And that is, again, completely built in React. While the whole website itself is Drupal, we implemented that finder of hotels with React. And there we can do these things. And because if you want to implement like that filtering with Drupal and Ajax, I'm not even sure if that is going to be possible. And React, it's super easy because there are plugins that connect a map with a list and things like that. So again, here we used progressive decoupling to just replace parts of the website. So, what do I want to talk today? As we know, what is the difference between fully and progressive decoupled? I want to talk about the skill sets of our people, projects, clients, and a bit about the future. So let's talk first about the skill set. We learned really fast that we have to train every developer, and I really say every developer, on React and the new JavaScript. And we did that with first having some external people that we brought in, external trainers. We brought them into our offices, and we trained everybody that was there at the time. That meant for 1 week, we didn't really do a lot of client-related work, but we really focused on doing that training. We also used code camps. Code camps is a camp in Las Palmas, Spain, where they bring all kind of people together, and they train your engineers on React or Angular or things like that. And we also do internal training where people, because we have a global team, where people, for example, flew from Zurich to Austin and trained the people there. So after we had a couple of people that got trained, we used these people to train more and more all over the world. So what did we learn about that? First of all, the JavaScript that you know about or that you maybe did 5 years ago with some jQuery is not the JavaScript that we use today. That's a very, very important thing. First of all, the way how you code is changed quite drastically with ES6 and things that will come. Plus also, it's much more than just running some jQuery selectors here and there. It's actually implementing a full application in JavaScript. So that is something that we saw we need to teach our people, we need to train them that they really understand. Then the term front-end that was used in the past is not just CSS, HTML, and a little bit of jQuery. You can actually now implement full logic in the front end. Everything we saw before in terms of like the filtering, the searching, do I need to show the global map or not, that's logic. And in the past, that was all implemented in Drupal by backend people. But now it can actually is built in JavaScript, therefore in the front end. So one of the things we learned is that the terms backend and front end, they don't make sense anymore. Because now the backend people are building JavaScript, which in the past in Drupal is always called the front end. So think about how you want to actually give job titles, or if you have job titles in terms of front end and backend developer, that they probably don't make sense anymore. And we actually solved that with having teams. We have Scrum teams of 5 to 6 people, and within there, all different skills are just covered, but we don't talk anymore about you are a backend developer and you are a front-end developer. They're a team that bring a multiple different skills to the table, and together they implement stuff, and the team decides how they want to split up the work and things like that. Hiring. Everybody talks about how hard it is to hire Drupal people. There's one thing you can do. You can make it even harder, and you can hire full-stack engineers, which means you're going to search for Drupal people and React people. And I can tell you these are the unicorns that only exist here and there, maybe a little bit. You find them sometimes. They're very shy, and they run around. No. No, they are hard to find. They exist, and they are very on demand, of course. But you can find JavaScript engineers, and I can tell you there are many out there. Why? People that go to school right now, they learn JavaScript. They come out of school and out of studies that they already know JavaScript, because it's a super perfect language to learn, because it runs in your browser. You don't need to run compiling and whatever. You just code it. There are hundreds of really good online teaching courses for JavaScript. And so we can now hire people that most predominantly know JavaScript, and we can train them Drupal on the go while they work with us. But that's a huge pool of people that we can now tap into that in the past was not possible. And the other thing is, developers are in love with React or any other decoupled front end. They love working on it because it makes so much more sense that you have a really front-end focused system and a back-end focused system. Developers like simpleness in projects, in complex projects, and it makes that much more easier. It makes more sense where is what coming from, and you don't have any Twig pre-processing things that is done in PHP, but then I still need to do it in Twig. For example, with Decoupled, it all happens on the front end. It's all there. You have full access to everything. So let's talk about projects. The first question, and the important question, is, yeah, who pays for that? Because it's an investment. It's not something that you just tell your engineers, now we do decoupled. Because we just heard there's a lot of training involved, there's a lot of tools involved, there's a lot of knowledge involved. Luckily for us, the first project was the investment was actually shared between the client and Amazy. Not completely on Amazy and also not completely on the client, but we had the chance. Not everybody of Amazy was part of that first project, but we had the chance to learn together how to do it. And the other important thing is we invest over time. It's not just something that you say, okay, I do 1 week training and that's it. You need to continuously invest, and that means sending people to training, sending people to events, continuously researching what's happening in terms of JavaScript and React and stuff like that. So make sure that you understand that it's not just something I do tomorrow, it's something, if you commit to it, you're going to do for a long time. The other thing, just things that we learned, hosting. As mentioned, if you want to run SEO, a good SEO and accessibility websites, you need server-side rendering, and that means you need server-side rendering on the server side, so you need to run a node server on the hoster. As of today, not every Drupal hoster supports that, so you need to think about how can I run my fully decoupled also on my hosting infrastructure. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. Talk to me afterwards if you want to know what there is, but just think about that. It's not just a Drupal that you need to run anymore. You also have other servers you need to run. The most important one, I think, expect failure. It's a very new system, and it's also sometimes very complex in understanding everything. As of ourselves, I don't have real numbers, but I think we probably invested 250 to 350,000 euros over the last couple of years in teaching our teams, in having projects that failed, in projects that went over budget that we couldn't charge anymore, or things like that. It's very, as I said, it's very hard to say because it's so dispersed in a lot of different places, but it is quite a thing. And I think the most important thing is allow your teams to fail and learn. Nobody's going to be perfect with decoupled from the very beginning. But use failure as a chance. Do retrospectives. We do them every 2 weeks. We look at the last 2 weeks and discuss what went good, what went bad, and share these learnings. If one team has a big aha moment, try to make sure that the other teams, if you have multiple teams, learn that well as well. There's many different ways how to do that, but make sure that that not every team has to step over the same hurdles again and again and again. And I think the last interesting one is celebrate the success. Celebrate success when we started doing that, it was very scary for a lot of people. There were very excited people, but there were also people that were very scared because suddenly they have to learn something new. They will see that maybe they will not be good at it, or they will have a lot of hair pulling out moments. So celebrate the success. Allow them to celebrate that they went through the process and they launched the site and they did that. And don't underestimate that. And the next thing is now we realize we can do more than just React. So we actually have the first projects with Vue.js because we realize for some specific project it makes more sense to use Vue instead of React. And because that's an important thing to understand, the JavaScript ecosystem is much, much more closer than in PHP. People always compare React and Vue sometimes to Drupal and WordPress, and that's not the case at all. React and Vue are so much more closer because how the whole ecosystem of Node or JavaScript has started is very different how PHP has started. So if you know how to build React, you know much better how to build Vue because it's still the same ways of how to do things. Of course, you have to learn some things different and you have to read and how they work, but it's easier to switch between them than, let's say, switch between Drupal and WordPress or so. On the clients. So one interesting thing we learned quite early is they actually want decoupled, or Sometimes they even request it. And they maybe don't come to you and say, I want to have a decoupled project, but they show you another website that they saw, and they have this all like really cool experiences, very fast clicking, and like these things that we saw before. And I think it's important to make sure that the client understands the consequences if you decide for a fully decoupled, especially if they have some Drupal experience from the past, that they understand that with the fully decoupled, that a lot of things that they're used to, that maybe went really fast in the past, now take a bit longer. And include them in the learning process if possible. Tell them that this is a new technology. Make sure that they understand that it will be an investment now, but that will pay off in the future because they have possibilities with decoupled websites that are not possible with regular Drupal websites. And as mentioned, interestingly, we now get specific requests for React. So we get requests from people, from clients that come to us and say, we want React. Why that? Well, React somehow is understood as the enterprise framework. It is used by all big companies. There is a huge list if you Google for who uses React. There's a huge list, and you pretty much find every big internet company somehow uses React. And of course, because it is backed by Facebook, it's understood that this is something that is not going to go away just tomorrow again, how it was a bit the problem in the past with JavaScript frameworks, that pretty much every 3 minutes there is a new JavaScript framework popping up. Luckily, all the license issues are resolved. There was last year a big issue with licenses. They're now all licenses MIT licensed, so no problem at all there anymore. That comes up here and there sometimes, that people heard about the license issues, but not about the resolving of them, so you can definitely tell them that they're done. And another interesting thing is now we have projects where we just build the backend. That means in that project, there is another agency that builds the front end, and we build the back end. And between these two agencies, we have a contract. And that contract is a GraphQL schema that was agreed on very early. And now the front end agency can work on there. They use the GraphQL that we provide, and we just work on the back end. We make sure that the content editor experience is nice and stuff like that. So you can now also have completely different working environments together with your clients or within big projects. The future. So what I've seen in the last 2 years, how fast that our clients actually start to adapt decoupled, or how fast the big projects that we do, and that's like 200,000 plus projects, how fast they request React from the very beginning, or that the clients realize that if I now have a React frontend or a decoupled frontend and the Drupal backend, that I have a lot of, that this is a very positive thing for the future because I can independent update them, I can independent do stuff. So maybe in the future, especially when I'm talking about these big projects, maybe there will be always decoupled. It's definitely a trend that we see right now in these size of projects that happens. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we clearly see the demand is happening more and more. And if we look at competitors of Drupal, many things are actually going to be decoupled as well. And if you look at CMSs that just are right now are built, they're built decoupled from the very beginning. They don't even try to render PHP for the front end. They say from the very beginning, we use React as our front end, and our CMS is PHP and uses it on the back end. So I think it's as a Drupal community, and especially if we build websites for the very big clients, we need to make sure that we can stay there. For Drupal itself, it means we need to focus on better editor experience, because the editor experience is still, as of right now, all of our Drupal, our fully decoupled projects, the editor still logs in to a regular Drupal admin UI and uses that. And what we do is we try to make the experience there better. Of course, there's also the possibility to build a decoupled editor experience, but that is going to be even harder, and we have actually a whole Drupal core initiative that tries to work on that, because there's so much more that you need to handle in terms of state and different and savings and things like that. So it's quite complex. So right now, most of the time, the editors still log into the Drupal backend and do their stuff there, and we just make sure that the experience is much better. And that's already happening, but I think there is definitely room for improvement, is having Drupal to support even better APIs. Because at the end, that's all that a decoupled front end is talking to the Drupal is via APIs. So to make sure that JSON API gets into core, hopefully also GraphQL at one point, that we have as Drupal very, very strong API support, that we can do whatever we want to do that we currently can do with Drupal, we can also do via decoupled websites. And the last thing, I wasn't sure if I should say it or not, will we maybe not use Drupal anymore? Because if we look at some of the projects at the very end, all the logic of the website, the user experience, the menu navigation, all that stuff happens now in the decoupled or in the React part anyway. So we use Drupal only for content storage. And of course, Drupal is awesome if you have workflows, if you need workspaces. Everybody is excited at our side to use that. And of course, there's still a lot of things that Drupal provides, but some of our projects don't need that. All they want is just a place where they can edit a website and can go in and change the start page or change some code, some content, save it, and they want to see in the website. They don't need role-based access control. They don't need workflows. They don't need workspaces. They just want to edit content. And right now, there are definitely alternatives to Drupal that provide GraphQL APIs that then can be used again. So it's not something that we ourselves actually do right now. We still use Drupal as the backend, but the question here and there comes up that after a project is done, we wonder, did we really need Drupal for that? And I think that's something that we will see. I don't have an answer for it, but we will definitely see what's happening in the future. But I can definitely say that Drupal still provides a lot of features, as mentioned, workflows, workspaces, things like that, that no other CMS provides out there, where Drupal is still the very best to use. That's it. Thank you. So we have around 10 minutes for questions.
Hi. Do you prefer to use JSON API or GraphQL usually? And why?
We're actually the maintainers of the GraphQL module, so that's an easy answer. Personally, as myself and as Amazy, we like GraphQL much more because we think it's much easier to consume it. It's much easier to learn an API that if you have never seen it before, GraphQL helps you to understand, like with the GraphQL, with the interactive systems, it just allows you to see it much more what is there and what not. JSON API has other advantages. I think right now it doesn't really matter. Of course, I would tell you GraphQL, but in terms of what you can get out, as long as you're not using the REST module of Drupal, you do everything correct.
Okay, and second question, how do you choose between using Vue or React between your projects?
It's a decision of the teams. So they like the decision of, do we use it fully decoupled or not? It's a decision that the people that are actually going to implement it are involved in. We also involve the clients, we involve the project manager, so there's usually at the beginning, sometimes it's already clear, sometimes it's not, it really depends on the project. The decision for Vue, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, actually came on that the client said they don't want to use React, and so we just used something else, like they somehow had a policy to not use React. So we said, okay, what is the next second one that we want to use? And so we used Vue, and after that, we liked it. the feedback we got was that in some parts it's definitely nicer than React, and now it's still a lot of React things done because we have all the build processes and automatic, like a lot of documentation is built around React. But I see Vue popping up here and there where it maybe makes a bit more sense. But at the end, it's always a decision of the teams. Do they feel confident in that? Do they feel they have the right skills? Does the project allow it in terms of project deadlines and things like that? So it's the decision of the teams.
Thank you very much.
As far as I understood, you said in the contracting way, so if you split front end and back end, you have to do a certain amount of I'd say, of definitions in advance. Is this sort of interfering as well with an agile way of developing afterwards, or do you have some pitfalls or best practice you can talk about?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. So I think the decision that you need to do is between fully decoupled or progressive decoupled. So that decision needs to happen not before you write the first line of code, but very early in the project, because it just decides a lot of things along the way. And as mentioned, a lot of times it's already clear that it is fully decoupled, for example, that the client comes and requests that already. So then it's not even a question. Or like the other project that I mentioned where we actually only do the backend, or the front end is already done. We had that in the past as well, that we actually are given a front end that has a GraphQL schema, and they say, now implement me the content storage basically for it. In the other side, we tried to convince in the past sometimes clients to use fully decoupled. And hindsight, I think it was rather hard. So I would say right now, most projects are started as a Drupal only, so a Drupal theming project where we use the front-end systems of Drupal. And then during the agile approach, when we discover the different parts of the website, then we bring up and say, hey, that part would make sense to be built with a decoupled. So I would say at the beginning, we really need to decide between full or Drupal, and then if we do the Drupal, then we can add progressive to it along the project. Does it answer your question?
Yeah, thanks very much.
I'd like to continue on this, at this point. If you decide or want to discuss with the customer in the beginning whether or not to choose for decoupled, which aspects do you check? What arguments do you have, pro and cons?
Oof. I mean, I think it really depends on what does the client expect of the website to do. If the client expects the website to be super fast, for example, or to be very interactive, that like things like, and it's more like an application almost than just a regular website. So like let's say you have like things that open up while you visit the website, or just like, or going back and forth, or having wizards and all that kind of stuff. That's all so much better done with React. Because there, it's much better than just like every single time request to a backend request and try to handle it on the backend. So it's really about trying to understand what is the website, what are the business needs of the website, and what is really there. If there are very clear indications that this is the case, I would explain them what is possible with fully decoupled, but then also explain them very early what they're going to lose, and also try to understand how much Drupal experience they have. Because if you have somebody that already has built, if the client already has done Drupal sites in the past, they maybe know about the web forms module. So the web forms is a good example that you explain them. You can still do the web forms on the Drupal editor experience, and then it renders the web form on the front. But that needs a lot of interaction and logic and stuff like that. I think, so that's definitely trying to understand what the website really wants. And the other thing is talking about the future. Because if you have fully decoupled, you could at one point, like the Drupal update is much easier of the fully decoupled websites than of the progressive or the fully Drupal ones. So talking about what is their plan for the future, when do they want to upgrade what, or for how long should it exist, and things like that, because I feel the fully decoupled helps there much better.
Okay, thank you. And you, you mentioned a number of those interactivities which can be a con for having a fully decoupled. Any other bottlenecks or any other things which are very costly if you do decoupled? Which things are hard if you do decoupled, apart from these?
Hard to say. I think one of the issues that we also struggle with is multilingual. It's possible, but you just have to then somehow connect the Drupal multilingual system with the front end again. So that's a bit a hard one, but not on top of my mind right now. Okay.
Thank you.
So you talked about improving the editor experience, and how does decoupled work with things like layout builder, where the back-end editor can create some layouts, for example? As far as I understand, this is not really possible with decoupled.
It depends. It depends what you build, because the React that you start is an empty JavaScript file. So you can definitely, like what we used so far is, for example, we have on the back end, we had paragraphs, and the information about which type of paragraph is sent to the React. So the React realizes, oh, at the top, so the React not only gets information about content, but also information about which paragraphs in which order. And for each paragraph type in Drupal, we mapped that on a React component. And then, so basically the editors still have the possibility to create their nice layouts in paragraphs on the Drupal backend, and then that directly refers to the React frontend. And the same you could build in the layout builder. So if you inject, or if the React not only loads the content, but also loads like what type of layout is selected, and based on that you then do the React stuff, it's technically possible. The data, the APIs are all there. There is not, though, a module that I can tell you right now, install it and use it. So that's downside. But you can, whatever information you have in Drupal, you can use in React. They're all exposable via the APIs, and you can consume and you can decide based on them. So it's not a hard no, it's more like how much budget do you have. So, yeah.
Yeah, Michael, first of all, thanks for this great insights into this pioneer work. I have a question, I'll walk over there because we had a question over there. One thought I had is like, what are the impacts to multi-site organizations, like global organizations who want to scale across thousands of sites? What are your thoughts around that?
I actually think it's going to be easier to use a fully decoupled system if you need a lot of different Drupals or a lot of different sites. Because the project that we've done initially is the project where we had, right now we are 4, I think they're building 2 more decoupled front ends. And the cool thing is, creating a new website is just creating a new, in the React, creating a new branch of that and do it. And you don't have to worry about all the Drupal stuff because they can all talk to the same Drupal. So especially in an environment where you need a lot of different sites, they almost have all the same content, they're just slightly different. It's much easier to do that with a React system. And we see more and more projects where this is specifically a requirement, yes, and they want to have one centralized content repository, but the sites should look completely different. And I think there a fully decoupled makes much more sense. And of course, it will be an upfront investment to figure out everything, but if we talk about 1,000 Drupal sites and also running 1,000 Drupal sites, that's much harder than having maybe one Drupal site that just provides APIs to everything.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I learned what is decoupled and I liked it. It seems fine. But I wonder, actually it's something about using different technologies together. But I wonder, doesn't it bring the technical complexity? I'm the client at that case because I'm not a developer. I'm working with an agency. And I wonder if it's easy when you face a problem to understand the root cause of it. And the other question is, how can I sell it to the internal business stakeholders? decoupled?
Okay, so the first question about if it increases the complexity. The complexity of the project is definitely increased. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Does it increase it for the client? Sometimes, yes. I think it depends on how deep the client is involved with you in the project. What we've seen in the past now is that it's hard to say. I think there is definitely an increase of complexity, but it's maybe less than what happens on complexity on side of, like, let's say the engineers and like how they think about where the data is coming from and stuff. Because we always try to give the editors, for example, a really nice experience that it's clear when I edit that what happens there and stuff like that. So yes, a bit increase and whatnot. About the question of how to sell it internally. I really believe that in 5 years, we're only going to do decoupled. Maybe that's a crazy my own view of it, but for engineers and for the web, it makes so much more sense to render the website actually where it happens, aka in the browser. That's a very technical explanation, but and with PHP, we always try to assume how wide is the viewport right now. Is that viewed on an iPhone or an Apple Watch or a big screen or a small screen? So we try to put so much logic into the back end, while it would be so much better in the front end. Like it makes so much, architecturally it makes so much more sense to do the rendering of the data where actually the data is shown. So I think that is just something where the whole web is changing. Also, like the approach of having API first and everything microservices, it's part of that scheme as well. Because if now somebody comes to you and says, can I somehow consume, like I want to show the newest entries of my Drupal also on a big screen or so. You already have a GraphQL API or a JSON API and they just can consume it. Like it's already there. You don't need to build more APIs because they're already there. So I think it's just something that we need to understand. That's where the web goes. And do we want to follow it right now? I think right now it's definitely more on the crazy part, very early. But I think the next couple of years, we will all think about that. So now the decision is, when do we do it? So it's very similar to, let's say, for the Drupal 8 upgrade. At which point did your company decide, when do I build the first Drupal 8 website? And you can either do that at the very early stage. We built the first Drupal 8 website with the word Drupal 8 Alpha. And other agencies maybe did it after Drupal 8.3. But all of it have to think about it. And I believe with decoupled frontend, it's a very similar situation, that we all need to think about that at one point in our lives as web developers. Are we out of time? Okay, Last question? Okay, so I'm still going to be here, so you can come later. Yes, last question.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the classic question. SEO?
Yes.
If you have encountered any problems and possible solutions to that, and if you guys do like following up on, let's say if you had a Drupal 8 site, right, and you added some kind of decoupled functionality, or you even rebuild it, if you have noticed an effect on the SEO, positive, negative, I mean, I guess negative, but yeah, any thoughts about that?
So I think the most important thing is that you understand, if you build something decoupled that depends on the browser executing JavaScript that then loads data or has data, you cannot assume that any crawler, even though there are out there now crawlers that can run JavaScript, or any non-browser, means screen readers, automated systems, they do not run that JavaScript. So the HTML that you receive as the first request needs to be everything in there, has the right tags and everything in there. That's what you achieve with server-side rendering. So you need a Node.js somewhere running on the server side that is capable to render your React and send it to the browser. If you don't have that, your crawler will basically see an HTML5 with 10 lines of code and one big JavaScript file that is included. And maybe they will execute it, maybe not. You cannot decide. So I think that's the most important thing. You need server-side rendering or it will not work. If we saw improvements or not, it's the same topic again. Drupal provides a lot of, I wouldn't say the best SEO, but it provides some SEO at the very beginning. Like all the meta tags and all that stuff, they are there. Now, if you build a React fully decoupled app, none of them are there because you maybe didn't enable the SEO module. So you need to think about that as well, that you install. But if you think about it, and if you do SEO reviews and have proper tests for the SEO and do all of that, you can achieve the same good SEO ranking like any other Drupal site.
Wouldn't you say that contradicts the statement that it should be all executed in the browser? So if we server render it, then we're still serving HTML, right? So wouldn't that still be the way to go in the coming years anyway?
Yes, but I think the question is, what are you focusing on? For me, the crawler is maybe, or the SEO bot is maybe 5% of the website, or 5% of the traffic. But the 95% of actual users, of the people that will actually do the conversion, that will use their credit card, that will do the stuff, for me, they are more important than the crawlers. Of course, the crawlers are not important. So I'm focusing on the 95% of the people that actually use the website, that actually want all the good things that we get with React and Decoupled. And I think they are more important. And for the crawlers and stuff, yes, I still have server-side rendering for them. And maybe in the future, we don't need it anymore. Maybe they can all execute JavaScript. Server-side rendering shows it's possible, but it's maybe just a bit of time until that is all possible, and we can throw away the server side. But right now, you need it, or you're going to lose out on SEO completely. Okay.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.